Alright, so in our next lesson we are going to talk about two things. The first one is called the quadratic formula, and the other is called the discriminant, which is just part of the formula. So I'm going to first give you the formula for the quadratic formula. First, before I give it to you, or as I'm giving it to you, I'm going to explain that the quadratic formula is just another way for us to find an x value where a quadratic equation equals 0. It's my personal favorite way of solving. It works 100% of the time. And the formula goes, if you have ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, then we can say that x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of our b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So instead of factoring, instead of completing the square, instead of all those other methods we've learned, we can use this quadratic formula. This will work all the time. Let's look at an example. So example 1, we are going to take 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 and set it equal to 0. So we can say, since this is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, I first like to identify what is my a, my b, and my c. Well, in this case, a is equal to 2, b is equal to 3, and c is equal to, since it's minus 5, c is negative 5. So I'm going to just use my formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So I'm going to replace my b's with 3, so I'm going to have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4. I'm going to replace a with 2, so 4 times 2 times c is negative 5, so times negative 5, all divided by 2 times 2. So now we're going to clean this up. Well, I know 3 squared is 9, so I can rewrite this as negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9. Now I'm going to just go ahead and go 4 times 2 times negative 5. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. So if I minus negative 40, that's the same as adding 40. Divided by 2 times 2 is 4. Now let's keep cleaning this up. I've got negative 3 plus or minus the square root. 9 plus 40 is 49. Divided by 4. Well, I know the square root of 49. That's 7. So we're going to have negative 3 plus or minus 7 divided by 4. So now I'm going to set up two equations. I'm going to have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 4 and negative 3 minus 7 divided by 4. So in this first case, negative 3 plus 7, that's 4 divided by 4, which is 1. So one of my answers is 1. Negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 divided by 4. Can simplify. We can divide them both by 2 to negative 5 halves. So we've got two answers. We've got negative 5 halves and we've got 1. Let's check out another example. So example 2. we're going to still use the quadratic formula, but we're going to look at x squared minus 2x minus 4 is equal to 0. So I like to first identify my a, my b, and my c. A in this case is 1, b is negative 2, c is negative 4. So I'm going to go x is equal to negative b, so the opposite of negative 2 is 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4, all divided by 2 times 1. Let's clean it up. We're going to have 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 16 divided by 2. Well, 4 plus 16 is 20. So we're going to have 2 plus or minus the square root of 20 divided by 2. And I'm going to write this in simplest radical form. So I know 20 is 4 times 5, and 4 is 2 times 2. So with square roots, we look for groupings of 2. We've got 2 2's, so we can pull a 2 out. So this is going to equal 2 plus or minus 2 square root 5 over 2. Now I look at this and I know all three terms, both up top and the one at the bottom, all three parts are divisible by 2. So I can rewrite this as 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. I'm fine with us leaving it that way because I don't know what the square root of 5 is off the top of my head. I could also plug these into my calculator and get a decimal answer. That is also acceptable. So now there's another topic we were going to talk about in this lesson, and that is the discriminant. Now the discriminant just tells us how many solutions a quadratic equation is going to have. And there's a formula for the discriminant. The discriminant is found by just taking the b squared minus 4ac part of the quadratic formula. And there are 3 cases, 3 different scenarios that can happen. So the first one, if b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, meaning it is a positive value, then the equation is going to have 2 real solutions. That's case 1. Case 2, if this b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, then the equation has only one real solution. And then the final case, if our discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac, is less than 0, meaning it is negative, then the equation has 0 real solutions. It doesn't mean there's no solution at all. It just means that the solutions this equation would have are not real solutions. So now let's look at our third example. Which is just to find the number of solutions to each equation. And we're going to utilize the discriminant for that. So first, we'll call it 3a. We're going to have 3x squared plus 10x plus 2 is equal to 0. We're not solving this for x. We're just finding how many solutions it has. So first, we do need to know our a, b, and c. So in this case, a is 3, b is 10, c is 2. We're going to take b squared minus 4ac and figure out which situation does that come under. So if we're going to take 10 squared and subtract 4 times 3 times 2, well, 10 squared is 100. 4 times 3 is 12, and that times 2 is 24. 100 minus 24 is equal to 76, which means that's positive. So we are going to have 2 real solutions. Let's do part B here in blue, just so we can have a little variation. B is going to be 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 is equal to 0. So again, we need to know our a, b, and c. A is 9, b is negative 6, c is 1. So we're going to do the same thing. B squared minus 4ac. We're going to take negative 6, square it, and subtract 4 times 9 times 1. Well, negative 6 squared is 36. 4 times 9 is, times 1 is 36. So 36 minus 36, that's 0, which means we're going to have 1 real solution. And I have a part C to example 3, so let's do one more here. So we'll just call this 3c. Our equation is going to be x squared plus x plus 1 equals 0. So again, we need to know a, which in this case is 1, b, which is 1, and c, which is 1. So I'm going to go b squared, 1 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 1. Well, 1 squared is 1, 4 times 1 times 1 is 4, and 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Since that is negative, we have no real solution. And that concludes example 3. And really, that wraps up our lesson on the quadratic formula and the discriminant.